Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on a brand new episode of this special series on NewsX. The NewsX BRICS We Dialogues. And the topic this week is extremely pertinent and interesting. It's on opportunities for women in the higher education sector and also the challenges that they face in India and, of course, the other BRICS nations across the world. This special episode is brought to you with in association with the academic partner of NewsX and BRICS We for School of Management. So without further ado, let me quickly introduce our panelists who are joining us today. We have Dr. Padmakali Banerjee with us live, Pro Vice Chancellor, Amity University, Haryana. We also have Neha Prakash, IAS Officer, joining us live, Special Secretary, IT and Electronics. Tatiana Kosoreva, Assistant Professor, Moscow State Linguistic University, is also joining us live on the broadcast. She's in fact live with us from Russia. So we welcome you to the show from cold Moscow, as you told us earlier. Dr. Vinay Agarwal is also joining us, Chancellor, ISBM University. We also have Dr. Vinay Shiv Gautam with us, Vice Chairman for School of Management. Sharmishta Ghosh is also with us live, Director, Business Advisory, BRICS CCI. We'll also, of course, be doing a Viewer Connect segment at the end of the show with Sharmishta. So firstly, thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Dr. Gautam, let me begin with you first. Your opening comments on, on the topic at hand. Do you believe that there have been immense challenges for women in the higher education sector, particularly in India? What have you done, sir, at the FOR School of Management to alleviate that? And do you believe with time, things are improving?
Well, there are two statements which I have no reluctance in going with you fully. There are challenges, there are always challenges, and there are challenges in all situations. And so far as the FOR School is concerned, as a research-oriented institution, we have an active interest and we pursue it with vigor. And we come to some conclusions which we hope will be used by the academy and the society at large. To get to the heart of the matter with reference to the topic posed before the panel, I would like to make two submissions. First, BRICS is, to my understanding, one of the most unusual combinations of countries, denying geography, denying economics, denying all types of ideological platform, other than you have some nation from each continent, and each nation is so gigantic in its size that it's bound to have a global influence. Now, that's a defining characteristic of BRICS, which is so different to all other combinations, and the world is full of regional combinations, but this is the only global combination across continents and in the different parameters that I identified. Therefore, I will use that as a vantage point of perception to make my observations. If you are talking of women and higher education across this kind of geographical spectrum, and with a pinch of generosity include the friendly countries also, which is a part of the topic, I would submit that we have at our hand, to begin with, a problem which can be best seen as a problem of categories. A woman in Brazil is not necessarily a woman of the same age in China, because the contexts are different, the economics is different, the orientation is different, and of course, the fact that they are a part of the human species is a common binding force. Which leads us to a very important component of the discussion, which I would like to be discussed not only in this fora, but in other fora, because the subject of women's studies is riddled with confusion of categories. What is work for a woman? I think that's a contradiction in terms. Work is work, whether a man does it or a woman does it. That the economists in their wisdom and their co-travelers haven't attributed any monetization value for domestic work is not a problem of the society, is not a problem of women, is not a problem of men. It is a problem of people who are trying to understand the process. You attribute a value to domestic work, it becomes a remunerative work.
Yes.
And it doesn't just have to be paid for, it has to be factored in. Now, I
Okay.
could elaborate upon that because there is a problem of time. I'll skip that to go to another basic proposition, which I think the panel should be concerned with. It is not only the gender factor which is undergoing a change, but it is also the nature of work which is undergoing a change. The boundaries of work have become fuzzy.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge managerial problem. I'll stop there because there is much to say on it, but
Yes,
it
I
would
will
be
come
a
back to that
starting
in
point.
just a second. Yeah, I'll come back to that in just a second, Dr. Gautam. But let me take that across to Tatiana, who's also joining us, from Russia, as I said earlier. Tatiana, just giving this conversation now a bit of a global dimension. In Russia as well, are there immense challenges? And how have those challenges really been turned into opportunities for women in the higher education sector to skill them for the road ahead?
Well, well, first of all, I'd like just once more to greet everyone present in this forum and to thank organizers of this forum and for the chance for me to participate in it. And what I wanted just to stress, frankly speaking, to be true to the facts that I can say that we in our higher education have more women than men, and say 57% of professors in higher education institutions in Russia are women.
Mhm.
And those women, the percentage of women who got higher education, all in all, is 37 against 99% of men who got this education. But though we have 57% of professors, female professors in higher education, still the leading positions are mostly occupied by men. And this is just a real challenge, and there are certain reasons for that. And one more challenge, which is now widely spoken also, and I also wanted just to cite even just the words by president of the All Russian Education Foundation about the concerns of their women of the retired age. So Russian women can retire at the age of 60, but so those who work in the world of science, in the education sphere, they stay much longer. But now, due to this pandemic, you see the scene changed drastically. And there is a tendency just to offer those female professors to leave earlier. And this is very, very difficult for those who like to change university to find a tenure track position in another university if you are older than 60. And this is a really challenge. And this, our president of the All Russian Education Foundation said that university teachers, I'm citing him, of retirement age are less knowledgeable about information and communication technologies, have worked less with computer systems and programs, but at the same time, they are the most experienced and have a wider range of knowledge. And as a result, university leaders may lose their high quality of trained specialists if they continue just to follow this trend.
Okay, Neha, coming to you, do you believe that that the challenges in India of 2020 are far lesser now for women in the sector than say they were multiple years ago? Are they now translating into further opportunities? And since you do serve with government, what can government do, and what has government done to facilitate women in this sector and their success?
Yeah. Well,
Neha, Tatiana, I'll just come back to you. We'll just get Neha Prakash to address that.
Okay.
Thanks, Uday, and a very good evening to all the panelists. Thanks for having me here. So in my view, higher education is a very powerful tool to achieve gender inclusiveness and women's equality, and also to dilute patriarchy, because higher education provides avenues for women to come out in the public sphere and give access to them to the professional workspaces, apart from generating a stream of income for the women, which makes them financially self-independent. So I just read a statement about Melinda Gates talking about the role of women in the COVID pandemic. And she said that when you ask a woman about the responses as to how to resolve this pandemic, they are much likelier to ask more relevant questions And this psychological, this mental and psychological factor which women have, this emotional factor which women have, they can be propelled to go more for these STEM careers. And higher education, we are living in a time where due to the increase in the number of universities and number of institutions and the number of job opportunities, women have a much bigger scope of getting access to higher education. But there are some challenges, and there are challenges in the access to this higher education. Then there are challenges when a woman is studying within the institution, and then there are the post collegiate challenges where a woman is able to convert this education into a job. So for many of the women, only the ambition is only to get a degree. So the purpose of higher education should be to convert this degree into something of use, to get a job, or to satisfy your own intellectual curiosity. So we have seen that there has been an increasing trend in the enrollment of women in higher education institutions. But even in this enrollment, there are many regional imbalances. Like we do not have many good quality institutions or universities in rural areas. So for the women of rural areas, getting access to higher education means traveling to a new city and making arrangements for their stay if the university does not have a hostel, and other such infrastructural constraints. Apart from this, there are the social constraints where families have to make a hard economic choice with their limited resources if there's a boy and there's a girl in the family. So quite often the families make this decision to educate the male child. If we talk about the government policy also lays more emphasis towards primary education, because primary education has been made mandatory, which is very logical because this is a pipeline of female students which will feed into the tertiary education. So getting more and more women enrolled in the primary education is important, because ultimately that will lead to them enrolling more for the higher education.
Okay. So, point taken. And in fact, at that point, let's take the conversation to people who are actively involved in higher education in universities. Dr. Banerjee first. Dr. Banerjee, your take on the changing trends that you are seeing, given that you are in academia, and as an academic, how can universities help facilitate, and help, stop some of these obstacles and reduce them, at least for women in India today? What has been done? What more needs to be done in your view, Dr. Banerjee?
So very good evening to everyone here. I would tell you that, if you look at post-independence, where, higher education, barely 10% of women would join in. Now you see nearly 48% of women are getting into higher education. But, it has been a roller coaster ride, and there has been various reasons. And another perspective to this is also that how post-globalization, when the economy opened up, that was a time when women realized that entrepreneurship is also for them. So I think we saw a huge change that took place in the mindset. And being a woman, I have seen that sometimes there is an aspiration deficit because you sometimes give up, as a woman. So what we need to see is, while you're educating right from the primary school, there has to be a seamless integration from K-12 school to higher education. So the change that we can bring in should start much early. So if you see, the government policies have been very, very progressive in the last few years. And we see in our new national education policy that has come in, that's going to give even more, help to the women. In fact, women who are going in for a maternity break, they can get an extra time to complete their PhD. And many things like that. So I think these are something which is the need of the hour. If you look at India per se, that, I was looking at, I think 2 years back data, which talked about if 19.1 million boys are coming in for higher education, now you are having around 18 million, girls who are, coming in for higher education. And so far, one very interesting thing that I have to make, and an observation that I have, is, it is the technology which will create a level playing field for people, because suddenly you do not know who is behind the technology.
Sure.
So what you can make a difference is through this kind of fast changing, technology that has brought in, where education is going to masses. And I think pandemic has been the best example, because, about 7 months back, when our university, we faced with such a issue, because of course we were ICT enabled, but when we moved into it seamlessly, you could allow everybody to have a very interactive classroom. Yeah. And in fact, very interesting studies have come in which showed that the student engagement was higher sometimes even in an online setting, where you can even click or put your emojis to say whether you like a class or you don't.
Okay,
So
Dr. Vinay Agarwal. Dr. Vinay Agarwal, why don't you jump in here on how much has improved and how much more needs to be done? Also, sir, technical institutes, the non-technical institutes and technical institutes, there's a difference in how they also approach. So do you believe there needs to be a uniformity in this domain as well, in all institutes across the country, both government funded and non-government funded? Dr. Vinay Agarwal, your take.
So I would, first of all, good evening to each and every panelist. I was hearing Ms. Neha, and I would actually agree with what she is saying, because the education system in India has been progressive throughout, like after independence, of course, as people have said. But then the education should be of some use. It should make a person more competent as compared to just getting a degree. Whereas right now, I have a university in a rural area of our country, and there the social pressure or the society is completely different as compared to what we see in a city. Yes. So empowerment, when we talk about women empowerment, when we talk about women employment, when we talk about women entrepreneurship, everything has to be focused. Like we have to focus over there in the rural area of our country also. Over there, we have a university which is in core rural area, where women are not even allowed to go out of their house, where women are not allowed to study up. Like they get married at the age of 16 or say 17 even now. And by 2021, they are they have their kids, they are completely dependent, the family is completely dependent on them. So the scenario has to be changed. Socially, we have to also focus on these areas where women empowerment and women upliftment is actually required. In city, we have got many facilities, many different avenues where they can show their talent. They have got many job opportunities. They have got many education opportunities and many other things. But in those areas, there is nothing. Yeah. Where the government of our country, in fact, the state government also, they are working hard towards there. But then, their awareness has to be created. True. Where.
And as far as BRICS CCI as well, since you're an advisor for BRICS CCI, how can bodies like BRICS CCI also play a role in helping solve the inequality problem?
So in BRICS CCI, what we have just started is we have started a center over there in the campus where students and women students can come over there. They are being given free training, free different kind of workshops have been arranged for these kind of awareness, where we can make the women more aware and attract them for new courses and new education avenues where they can come and uplift or make themselves competent enough for the market. Now in rural areas, we won't be getting many job opportunities, but then rural entrepreneurship can be motivated over there. Where in our state, like Chhattisgarh is our state, where comparatively women are much more competent, much more motivated as compared to men to work and to change the society. So this is what we are trying to do.
Neha, in your journey as well, do you believe that now there are many opportunities? You're a young woman IAS officer yourself. So, just speaking about your personal story as well, do you believe now there are different avenues that women can explore? It's becoming, the journey in a way is becoming easier and more streamlined for non-conventional career paths for women as well.
Yeah, so I have been very fortunate to be brought up in a family which did not discriminate between a boy and a girl, and they have been always committed and devoted to my education. And I completed my engineering and my management. And after that, I was in the corporate sector with TCS and Deloitte. And after that, I joined the IAS. So I definitely feel that this is a new era and a lot of opportunities exist for us. But simultaneously, we also need to look at the fact that after a higher education degree for a woman, are we able to accommodate her career? Do we have the same expectations from a woman in a job as we do from a man?
Yeah.
And does the woman have equal pay for equal work? Because ultimately, after a higher education, a woman has to make her career.
Yeah.
So we need to be supportive in her lifelong career and not leave her just by providing a higher education. So our society has to be molded in that way.
True.
And similarly, from the point of view of the student should also aim to put the degree to a use.
Yeah.
Because these days we see that there is a lack of skill. Even though engineers have their engineering degree, they lack in the many employable skills
That's
and
an important
professional
point.
skills. So
Yeah.
that is an important thing, because a degree should not be considered as a basic criteria for a woman to get married, that okay,
Yeah.
she's a
True.
graduate.
In fact, there's a debate also going on about raising the marriage age as well. And it could be raised from 18 possibly to higher for a woman, and that could facilitate more girls going to higher education and then onward. But Dr. Gautam, some solutions now. Let's talk solutions now. And also, of course, the fact that now there are different avenues. It's not just the STEM sector, where women can go, and we need to skill women for, but even the unorganized sector needs to be considered. And now a lot of more women entrepreneurs are also, joining this Startup India bandwagon per se. So your ideas, your solutions, Dr.
I would like to keep the focus on BRICS, because that's what we are here to talk about. Talking of Indian experience is important, but talking of BRICS is what the purpose of our get-together is. So in terms of BRICS, the solutions first and foremost begin with enabling circumstances. If you compare South Africa with India, and somewhere in course of your journey, you look at China, you find that in China, the hybrid method of education has done much more for taking skills and knowledge to the women than has been done in any other part of the country or in any other part of member countries of other states.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, the second proposition which I would like to put across is that information, documentation, and clearing activity in terms of women's studies in these terms needs to be taken up seriously, and that's where the journey would begin.
Okay.
My second submission is that the life cycle of a woman does not begin or end with university entry.
Yes.
University education is supposed to cater to lifelong learning.
Yes.
Therefore, extension education and continuing education has to be built into the scene. And please remind yourself
Yes.
that so far as STEM is concerned, dropout rates is not only at the beginning, but at each stage of the life cycle.
Okay.
So the second solution, and if you would permit me to conclude the argument,
Yes.
is that you have to look at femininity as an integrated whole of the human way of life and create solutions which are rooted in the context,
Okay.
both
Ms.
in terms
Kosareva.
of resources and skills.
Ms. Kosareva, some solutions now. Russia has obviously taken a lead on this, and how to translate the challenges, the obstacles into opportunities for women. Should we skill them? Should we ensure that their journey is not just disrupted after higher education? What are some ideas you want to give all the way from Russia?
Well, first of all, let us just begin from the first leaders, the first top that can help just those women. For example, if, from my own experience, some female professors, they really oppose just learning new IT technologies because they used to work just in the old way. And it's not just that it's a problem of the hidden age harassment in most cases. So they are offered just to take some courses and upgrade themselves, but just from But what I just faced myself, that at the linguistic university, some professors left because just they had sort of psychological resistance to that.
Right.
And though universities do a lot, and the leaders of the universities do a lot, but the courses are arranged so that just not everyone can grasp that. Just we are teaching to the millennials, and they are ahead of us in IT technologies.
So universities need to adapt. Universities need to adapt and take the lead. Dr. Banerjee, I think you can address that. Universities need to adapt. Universities also need to talk about skilling, about the practicality of education, and not just leave it to the classroom.
Absolutely. In fact, I wanted to say that when we are concentrating on BRICS, we are talking about nearly 46% of world population. So it's a great thought that when we look into these countries, we know what we can do to the rest of the world. And to come to the answer on the universities, I want to touch upon the fact that, we have to look at the SDGs. We talk about the Sustainable Development Goal number 5. And, it is contributing to not just the SDG 5, but to all the other sustainable developmental goals.
Right.
So whether you want to bring in better industrialization. So within the university system, not only an adaptability in terms of innovation in teaching, learning, or the teaching methods that you pick in, but the kind of variety and flexibility in terms of curriculum. So people have now more choices where students can take up minor and vocational education. So not every rural woman need to go and have a PhD. They can get into, for example, apparel sector.
Okay, we're running out of time. Sharmishta, I think you have a viewer question for us. Yes.
Yes. So I have one viewer question, which is, I'll put it very shortly here, which is actually the person is trying to ask that government does lot to promote. I think Neha also touched upon that. It does lot to promote basic education, primary education, 12th standard, etc. But that they don't provide jobs. Even the university education is not that expensive. However, higher education is really expensive and most of the time out of reach. Also, there is a choice. People choose to teach sons against daughters in lot of places. What can government as policy, not only as individual universities, policy do to mitigate this issue?
Who wants to take that? Dr. Gautam, why don't you take that?
Well, I think there is a role for the government, there is a role for the employer, there is a role for the self-employed, and the government comes in very importantly if you look at the regulatory role in cushioning the women's activity in terms of support systems like childcare, like leave systems, like parental leave, tax incentives, part of the formal workforce. So there is something which the government can do, but it can only go so far. The touchstone would be to distinguish between employment and being productively put in a space to utilize one's talent.
Right. Okay. Well, we're completely out of time, so we're going to have to leave it at that. This is obviously a conversation that we can have for hours, but that's all the time we had on this particular program. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us. Thanks to our viewers for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.